Today's episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast is brought to you by Poor Richard's Cafe and Star Local Media. Poor Richard's Cafe, Plano's oldest restaurant since 1973. They are open daily from 5:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., serving the three most important meals of the day: breakfast, lunch, and dessert. It is true Texas home-style cooking made with love and grit. That is Poor Richard's Cafe, located off of Avenue K in Plano. Welcome to another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch, being joined by Taylor Ragland, Brian Murphy, and Kendrick Johnson. That's right, we got four people at the round table for the first time, since we actually started doing the podcast in front of the video camera.
Yeah. And they said it couldn't be done.
I know, look at us breaking barriers, breaking new ground like this. For this episode of the podcast, we're kind of in that dog days of summer mode here as far as the high school sports calendar goes. So with high school football practices are right around the corner. I think we're going to actually start previewing our various districts and classifications next week. So just to kind of scrape through this last week, let's just kind of go off the beaten path with an idea that it's not going to require us to break down any teams or athletes or any of the stuff that we normally talk about. We're still going to stay true to what this podcast is all about, talk some high school sports, except we're going to ask one fairly simple question that's pretty broad, wide reach. You can go a bunch of different directions with this. What is something that you would change about high school sports? Whether you guys want to take a kind of a more micro level view and just change up something with a specific sport, whether it's a more kind of a big picture thing, something more macro level. Let's just open this up and see where it goes. We can have a little bit of fun with this one. So everybody's going to give our ideas, and we'll have a little bit of discussion off of it, and just see where this takes us. Kendrick, you just said you have two. So what is one of them? What is one thing that you would change about high school sports?
I'll save my big one for last. But my smaller one is by covering baseball this year. I don't understand. How can you play a series like Boyd did all the way up to the state tournament and then it's one and done? Like, can they do like they do in the College World Series or even the Little League World Series? I think it's two. It's a double elimination. Mm-hmm. Not in the Texas High School Baseball State Tournament. It's one and done. Like, I don't get that. So you went through all these series just to get there, and it's all of a sudden one and done.
Well, it's funny because Boyd lost all their game ones, so then when they get to state, it's like, all right, well, we're going to lose now.
Yeah, because if it's one we get, Taylor, you can speak to this because I think you had done a little bit of research on this topic beforehand.
People don't realize it's harder to get to the Little League World Series and win it than it's a Texas High School State title, just because of all the tournaments and the double eliminations.
Yeah, I don't know if I did research as much as I lived it in high school, and I thought about it then before I knew this is what I would be doing with my life, but I thought about it back then. It just doesn't make any sense to me that it's both ways, and I could see arguments for either side. I could see arguments that for kind of the health of the players and playing less games and less stress on arms, just play one gamers all the way through like other sports do. I don't think personally that's where I fall. I would rather see them play series all the way through, and then state championship be a series as well, because it wouldn't even be that hard of a fix, really, in my mind. You just play the state semifinals somewhere else. Yeah. You just have, the same structure as you do through, the regional finals, and just have teams meet up somewhere to play the state semifinals. And then the state tournament, you already use two fields. You could add another collegiate field in the Austin area if you needed to.
Or you can do like they do it in NCAAs, have like the four teams, and they play like the little, you got to win two double elimination. Like there's the super regionals and stuff for baseball.
Yeah, it's in college it's a lot more complicated because you have regionals.
What's the one to get to the super regional? That's how they can do the state tournament.
You have a regional tournament, and then
that's why I don't watch college baseball.
And then once you get to the College World Series, it's still double elimination with winners and losers. But even if you don't want to go that far, just have all the way through the state semifinals. These are the teams that are still playing, and then those teams win. You get two 6A teams that go to state, and you play a series.
If you treat it kind of like they do in football, where like you get to the state semifinals, but you still play that like you would any other round prior, where the teams agree on a neutral site and whatnot.
Baseball doesn't have a regional tournament now.
And then the week after, you play at the fixed location. You play in Dallas or in Houston or wherever the state championships are.
And like I said, they use Dishfog and Del Diamond now. You could add in one more collegiate field in the Austin area or wherever you want to hold it. One more really nice field for say the 1A and 2A go here, 3A and 4A go here, and then Del Diamond has 5A and 6A.
Feels very nice.
Yeah, UMHB is a great field. I mean, that's not super far. I mean, there's tons of places that you could you could host it. And I just think that it's, like you, Kendrick, I think it's silly that it's different. And it needs to be one or the other. Like I said, I could see the UIL's argument for one gamers. I don't think that's right. I think baseball is unique, and softball. Yeah. Obviously this applies to softball as well, in that it's the only sport where series factor in the way that they do, and they do during the season as well for some districts especially.
And the X factor that people always say now is the best team wins in baseball, but you see who really can deal with pressure, because every time Boyd would, especially when they played the Woodlands and Cy Ranch, when they was in game 3s, them teams did not want to be there. Cy Ranch had no intentions on playing. When they got a no-hitter in game 1, they had no intentions of playing in game 3. The Woodlands, okay, we got this with the Woodlands, and they fell down 3-0. They just had that look like this ain't supposed to be happening. So you start seeing how teams react with their backs against the wall, regardless of how good they are.
Baseball and softball are unique in that pitchers can be so dominant, and if you go to a one-game format forever, especially at state, it's like, well, you just have the stud, like you just have the guy. You've been forced to play series all the way here, but now the state title game is one game, and it's like, oh, we have a TCU commit, and he's just going to mow everybody down, and we're going to go win state. Like, it's not always that way, but it kind of eliminates that factor. Like, still, you get your game 1 win or whatever, but then, there's more play to it than just like, oh, well, we just have the better horse in game 1, and it's over.
It is interesting how this would have affected a team like McKinney-Boyd, because they're like the ultimate case study in just success in a 1-game series versus a 3-game series, because if the playoffs were simply boiled down to, who wins game 1, they would have been out in the second round, and if it was just but best of 3, they might have won the whole thing. It is just crazy how
this is my second ride. I covered Western One start in 2015. They lost every game 1 from game 1 all the way up, and got to the state championship game, got beat by Argyle.
It's what makes baseball and softball unique, and I feel like you take that away at state. That should be the ultimate expression of this is what's cool about this sport, and instead you play one game like everything else. It just doesn't add up.
So you guys had some amendments on how baseball should conduct its postseason. Where I landed on this for at least one of my suggestions was just doing some aesthetics. Let's alter things how they're conducted as far as soccer goes. Soccer, I don't think I've made any bones about it on the podcast in years past. I hate penalty kicks. I think that's a silly way to decide a high leverage sporting event when you have guys that have been out there just going full bore for 100 minutes or whatever. I mean, how long regulation overtime are, and then you have to settle it on essentially a glorified guessing game. How many times your keeper guesses left or right.
There's skill to it.
But not as much, though. But it's...
Well, they do it in the World Cup, though, too.
Yeah, and every professional soccer level they do PK.
And it's a very archaic system that I think is so outdated. I think it's so outdated. So I think that what you can do here, now you can still keep the penalty kick, but I think that there's a nice balance between skill from the keeper versus the attacker, whether it's backing the penalty kick up 5 to 10 yards or so. I don't know. I just feel like as it is right now, with when you're kicking, 12 yards is the distance from the penalty shot line to the goalkeeper. I just feel like it's just there's too much guesswork that goes into it, and I feel like that shouldn't even be a factor in deciding the outcome of a playoff game or a state championship game, which is ironically enough what happened this past year over in Class 6A with the boys. That's how Flowerman won its state title, by beating San Antonio Lee in a PK shootout. And I don't know, it just feels like after you've exerted as much as those guys have, just not over the course of a game but through an entire season, to have a state championship won or lost on a shootout, as is the current structure, it just seems a little like we can do a little bit better than that. I get the health concerns around why it's not even around anymore, but I love the run out.
I was just about to say, why not do dribble ups? Because then that takes more skill from the keeper, takes more skill than just shooting a stationary shot. You got to dribble up, you got to make a little move, and then put the ball in the back of the net. I'd be for that, where kids just getting too hurt.
It does, it does feel like that there's a high risk of injury in there if there's a collision or whatnot.
It's so entertaining.
Just ligaments shattering left, and it just seems like I can see why they've done away with it. But no lie. I think back to the first time I saw a run out covering a playoff match in high school soccer, and it was I wasn't even aware that was how they decided things. I just know it was so cool. It was literally it's just the oncoming dynamic from the keeper and the shooter just converging on one another. It's just your heart's racing, oh my God, what's going to happen? But with the way it is now, with just the standard PK from 12 yards out, I don't know. I've just always felt like too much luck goes into it, and I want to reduce that.
I would, just kind of vaulting off that a little bit. I'd like to see the golden goal maybe implemented at some level. Even if it's just in the postseason or whatever. I think that may actually cut down on penalty kicks, because how many times we still have somebody scores in overtime, there's still another 15 minutes of game time to go try to score again and tie it right back up, and it happens. Just make it, that would add excitement. That would make it, it would make overtime, I think, a different beast, because teams would be forced to adapt to that and play differently, instead of playing for penalty kicks or playing for, we have, this 20-minute overtime period where, it's more or less a mini match. I think that would be exciting as well. I don't know if it'll ever happen, but
I hate that concept of parking the bus when you know that other team is better than you, and if you can get it in overtime in that state tournament, and then the other teams will park that bus, they'll put 8, 9 guys back there, and it's just a week.
We knew if we got to overtime, we could get a win.
Exactly.
I've heard that from coaches.
I get that, and and then maybe a golden goal would, so it's 20 for sure minutes, of extra time. If there was golden goal, Wakeland girls, they wouldn't have won state 2 years ago, because they scored a miraculous goal to tie it back up to force the PKs in the second extra time. So, some teams benefit it, some teams, die by it. But golden goal definitely would be more interesting, for sure.
If we are keeping shootouts, though, going forward, one thing that I think, can at least help in prepping teams for that is if, I don't know if folks pay attention to this just from district to district, but there is no uniformity as far as how districts go about handling shootouts during the regular season.
If at all. If they even have them.
And the scoring systems from one district to the next can be completely different. Like District 9-6A this past year, they account for wins, losses, and draws. So there is no overtime. If it's 2-2 at the end.
Same with Frisco, same with 9-5A.
But then you have a district like, I believe it was 10-6A, Devon's Garland ISD district, where they just account for wins and losses. They play for shootouts and whatnot, and it just goes down as a win or a loss. And then you had back in 2016, 17 and 17-18 with the District 14-5A. And it was Lake Dallas and Prosper, McKinney North, the Colony, that district. And they did wins, shootout wins, losses, and ties. The 3-2-1-0 system.
And now a lot of those same schools in 8-5A have another completely different set of rules. A lot of the same schools, basically the same district, give or take a couple schools, and now it's completely different.
Matt, 3 words. Doing too much.
Yeah,
they're doing too much.
It feels like there can be we can definitely get everybody on the same page and just figure out, okay, we're going to play by this system, and whether it is having shootouts or whatnot, because I do think that for as much as I say about the guessing game that can kind of go into it, there is something to be said for the teams that have been through that fire before during the regular season and have had to compete in shootouts, actually been faced with those pressure moments. It's not like if you're just doing it in practice to get ready for the playoffs, that's not the same as actually having a legitimate district match rest on the outcome of a shootout. So you know what? Let's just all come together as one and figure out, okay, are we doing shootouts through the regular season or not?
Yeah. It's a shame that, this will probably never happen with, a lot of the changes that I thought about in prepping for this, probably would never come about simply for health concerns. These are kids at the end of the day. They're 15.
Taylor has no regard for human life.
They're 15 to 18-year-olds. As much as I would love to see in the soccer playoffs golden goal and just play until somebody scores, that will never happen because they don't want kids out there for 6 hours, playing, period after period after period after period until somebody scores. That's not going to happen. That's not going to be something that you can get to go over. So a lot of these have to be taken with that into account. There are a lot of changes that I would make that I think would be fantastic that will never happen, and rightly so, because these are kids. They're still developing. They can't do the things that professional or even collegiate athletes can do.
What is one that if health wasn't even a question that you had on your mind?
I think I brought it up earlier, off the air. I would like to see if baseball and softball postseason series are a thing. I'd like to see them played a little close together, maybe back-to-back days. I think would be cool. I think it gives kind of that feeling of, we're really playing a series. This is being contested, Thursday and Friday. We're at our place on Thursday, and, we get a chance tomorrow night to go turn around and go either win or avenge ourselves or keep winning or whatever. But another thing that's never going to happen, because you're not going to get the UIL to ever want to play games in consecutive days, and like I said, rightly so. Probably they're kids, and
knowing what the weather's like around here this time of year, that probably wouldn't be.
Okay, that's another thing that I just thought of. Why not play more soccer playoff games in venues like the Star or maybe even AT&T or in Houston. I know it's just soccer. I know it's,
Prime example. Last year when Bowie got screwed, basically, they played in a 50-mile windstorm.
Same with Lake Dallas.
I'm out in Odessa, looking through sand. I can barely see.
If they play that game inside the Star,
they win 9 out of 9 times. It's not even close.
Yeah, so maybe.
And that team knows it too. The other team knew it too.
Either don't start the season on New Year's when the weather is literally 30 degrees and terrible, and then you play those playoff games in March when the weather is windy, and then there's thunderstorms every other second, and you have all these delays and lightning delays, and the wind is all nuts. How about start the season a little later, kind of get it closer with baseball and softball maybe, and play some of those games in venues like the Star. There should be no reason that those awesome facilities should not be hosting big tournaments.
Leads to my biggest one with I guess pet peeve with the UIL, since I'm pro Dallas, grew up in the Dallas area, like all the teams, Frisco, Garland, McKinney, everybody. But in football, the Dallas teams have a huge advantage that they just go straight up to Jerry World. Well, some of them played 3 to 4 playoff games, Highland Park, and then they play the state championship there. It's that is not fair for a team like a Katy, or if a Woodlands make a run, or Glendon Park North Shore that's a powerhouse. They have to come up here every year. And I remember they had some snafu with the schedule 2 years ago, and all the Dallas teams went to Houston. And DFW got shut out in the big school brackets. What are the odds?
And Lone Star lost in 2015 when they had to play.
That's the year that you're talking about, yeah. Because I guess since 2006, the UIL's decided the site of the state championship.
Yeah, they've had 2 times in Houston, and both times are the 2 times that DFW got shut out in 6A.
I know in 2015 it happened. It was in 2008, previous to that, and that's actually where Allen and Prosser won state titles that year down in Houston. So
I thought Allen won that year.
Yeah, Allen won in 2008 when it was in Houston.
I thought they won 1.
And they beat Fort Bend Hightower, ironically enough, a Houston team. But no, yeah, it's because I was there for that for that year in 2015 when you had Salina and we just said
Salina would have won if
Argyle was down there. They lost to Waco La Vega.
Well, Salina would have probably won if their quarterback didn't break his arm. But
because at the end of the day, they have your high school kids, and they're not used to traveling that much of distance and hotels and all that stuff. Yeah. It's a big deal when you're 17 years old.
Why not?
You just go from you're in Allen or you're at Duncanville, you just get in your bus and you driving straight into Jerrywell like you've been doing for 2 or 3 weeks.
When was the last time the football state championship games weren't at NRG or AT&T?
I think Texas Stadium was the last one.
But that's okay.
Texas Stadium in Alamo, though. Well, another thing I don't understand is if you want to do the Austin bit, y'all love Austin. That's your headquarters. That's the second biggest stadium in the state. You can't do it at DKR. Doesn't make any sense.
It's just because it's outdoors?
That's another thing. You add no to my thing. First they said DKR because they had the grass. UT didn't want the facility, messed up the grass. Now they got the field turf. They can't use that excuse no more. And then what's this thing that you can play in a monsoon? I've covered 2 teams that's had that in the state semifinals. And then you show up to the championship, it's got to be immaculate conditions. We're talking about it's immaculate for football.
What about soccer? Yeah,
exactly. So if that's a big deal, how come it's not your cost? Because I've heard they want to make sure everything's fair for everybody. So it's only fair in football or what? So that's why they lead to more questions.
That's a fair question for sure. Yeah. Where do you stand on if you're thinking they should alternate the venue for football? What about for basketball or volleyball or?
Basketball would be cool if it was just in Austin. I think they could get away with that because the Erwin Center, they're about to upgrade it and stuff. They're about to get a new one, I think, a new UT basketball stadium. But
did they originally move it to San Antonio just because of the scheduling conflict?
Yeah. But I think they can rotate that one and get away with it because now that Dallas has came, because it used to be the flip. Houston was always good in basketball, Dallas in football, but now as we see our Dallas teams be showing up and showing out, so them playing, they can play at the Airline Center for a weekend or play at Toyota Center for a weekend and be done, or even put it at AT&T and you get an NBA.
Well, playing at the American Airlines Center would be tricky because then you have Stars and Mavs going on at the same time. But that would be awesome.
It was at the Airline Center for the longest time, but because of the schedule conflicting with South by Southwest and just the crowds around there, I believe that's one of the reasons why they had to move it elsewhere. But yeah, it's been in San Antonio for the past 3-4 years or whatnot. So yeah, let's see. All right, let me get to one more of mine. Let's see. Speaking of like venues, okay, yeah. So we've talked about kind of alternating venues. Justin Thomas, rest in peace, Justin Thomas. Justin, one of the pieces that he wrote about before he went to work at Avid Golfer and whatnot. It didn't even dawn on me at this point, but then he was doing some coverage for the following the state golf tournament, and I'm just kind of thinking like, okay, so. For years, like a lot of the UIL state golf tournaments have been fixated around the Austin area, and then you think of a sport like cross country that's been in Round Rock at Old Settlers Park, whereas you can debate the merits of how much home field or home court advantage matters because ultimately the playing surfaces are exactly the same. That's not the case in state golf or in state cross country because it does matter like how
especially golf.
Yeah, how much experience you have playing a certain golf course or whatnot, and there was kind of the belief among some of the coaches that Justin talked to that perhaps the Austin area schools had a bit of a built-in advantage because of having played those courses down at the state tournament far more frequently throughout the regular season.
Well, yeah, not even just the regular season. It's like you can't regulate where these kids go play golf. Mm-hmm. If it's a public course, especially if it's a public course, which off the top of my head I don't know what Legacy Hills, where Golf State was this year, requires to go play it. But let's just say the obstacles aren't there. You can go play that course probably as much as you want. Whereas, it's a topic that hits close to home for Plano West this year because the Plano West girls team was unbelievable, and they lose to Austin Westlake, which, granted, Westlake really good, really veteran. Girls that have been to state for 3+ years, basically up and down the squad. So not taking anything away from that program, but Plano West was so dominant, and if that competition is held at any course up here where they had the same amount of time to kind of prepare, and play the course, familiarize themselves. Because aside from maybe one practice event, one prep event, those girls have never seen that course. Yeah. And so it's just not, especially in a sport like golf where the course you're playing and how to approach it and, how to play every hole and everything is so important to being successful. It's unbelievable that it never moves. It's crazy because like I said, Plano West, I don't want to make the argument that they would have won state this year, but they're runner-up and have a roster full of girls that was the first time they'd ever been there. So you can imagine if they played it 10 times before the event. It's just a weird dynamic for sure.
And it's not like the Metroplex is lacking in quality golf courses that are capable of accommodating like the state tournament.
Especially with you think Taylor, because you on the golf scene, you think once the Frisco's courses get built that they start doing that because they must have majors and stuff in Frisco.
They could, man.
The next 6 years.
The only thing I think that
if
would
the pros can play there, they can play there, right?
Well, I think that would be the complication is that if it's the kind of the official home of Dallas's PGA scene and they're going to have professional tournaments there and stuff, are they really going to let, all these tournaments happen and have all these kids? I think so. It just depends on the dynamics of the course and who, as far as the public can play it and all that. I that may raise more complications than it helps, but it doesn't mean that there's not already courses up here that exist. The one in Prosper, I don't think the UIL would ever go to Prosper, but the one where they play 968 district's a fantastic golf course. There's so many good golf courses up here that I've never been to Legacy Hills, but as far as what I've seen, they're easily comparable. It's not that you have to play it at Legacy Hills.
This isn't a venue-related, conundrum, but I've always found it odd that like the structure of the spring tennis postseason has the district tournament take place, and then 2 weeks later you have regionals, and then 1 month later is when state takes place. Because we can trim that in half and make it just for the sake of consistency.
Feels like we can do something about that.
Because the coaches that I've talked to are very confused as to how that's still a thing. If you're a player and you just qualified for state, imagine having to wait 1 month before you can next play. At least in UIL competition, now they're staying active in the meantime with UTSA and stuff like that. But
you think UIL?
USTA. Today's podcast is brought to you by Star Local Media. 14 newspapers and websites with a print distribution of 270,000 homes and monthly page views of 600,000 online. Star Local Media, your community voice for news. And now, let's get back to the podcast. Brian, I know one that you wanted to discuss is another issue that has been kind of at the heartbeat of high school basketball season as far as some, whether or not it's a change that is overdue, but the shot clock.
Man, there needs to be some sort of shot clock. Not 24 seconds like the
35.
NBA, but yeah, go back to what college had a few years ago. A 35-second shot
Maybe
clock.
not even that. If you want to just 40, 45,
I'd be okay with that, because there was a time, it was Salina, I believe they were playing Melissa 2 years ago, and I kid you not, almost 2 minutes went by where they just held the ball and no one even came remotely close to playing any sort of defense.
That happened in the McKinney North game. I saw it happen 4 times this year.
4 times. That's one time too many.
Your microphone's giving you fits over there, Kendrick.
Well, and it's the problem too with basketball, because isn't there a rule in place that where if you're being defended, things
Yeah, so
happen.
it's a
things have to be
5-second
moving.
rule. If you're close enough to the defender or to the ball handler.
But if you're going to try to, that seems like putting Band-Aid on a problem that
for
could
sure.
easily be.
Because then if you
easily
have a
be
really
solved.
quick point guard, then you just kind of dribble up, make a little move, and then dribble back out, and the 5 seconds starts over again, and that happens every single game. Especially
during
when
playoffs.
especially during playoffs, especially when a team has that 10, 12 point lead. It's like, all right,
Seems like an
let's kinda do something.
overcomplicated solution to a pretty
And
simple problem.
8 schools or 8 states already have a shot clock, including big powerhouse states like California and New York. Hell, even South Dakota and North Dakota have a shot clock. I was kind of surprised to see that when I looked it up.
Yeah.
Why can't Texas do that?
Me and Matt both played. We needed it back 20 years ago. Hey, you can score more points.
Hey, I played junior varsity. Don't discredit me.
Athletes are good enough too. I mean, if you want to make any sort of argument about that it would change, I don't know. I mean, the athletes in high school today are so much more prepared than they ever have been for the next level. Like, I mean, it's one of those things where I don't understand why high school sports. There's several arenas, but this is one in particular where it's like, well, you have to do it when you go to college. I mean, if you have any designs on playing at the next level, like
it's a big change.
Guess what?
too.
There's a shot clock. Like it doesn't make any sense. Like I don't think you're adequately preparing these kids for.
It's a
for the
skill to
next
be able to
level.
have the ball 3 seconds. Know you got to shoot in a spot you're not used to, and timing. It's a lot of stuff that.
You'd think it'd help them be better offensive players, knowing we got to work on this. If shot clock's running down, we got to do this. You got to have this play in the
more
repertoire.
possessions.
And more possessions. You get more chances to score. And it just doesn't make sense why they haven't implemented something.
I think of the times when I've seen teams take advantage of there not being a shot clock, and the most recent example was probably a couple years ago in the regional finals when Allen beat Denton Geyer.
Yes, I remember this.
And that way it wasn't like Allen just standing at half court and holding the ball and not doing anything. They were working the ball around the perimeter. They were just waiting a while before
That's
they
not
actually generated a
basketball.
shot. It's because I don't know. I think of watching a game like that, and I think it happened with. It's happened a bunch, I'm sure, but I'm thinking of times specifically within my markets. Back when Marcus had its super team of Marcus Smart and Phil Forte and Nick Bander, when that team was winning its state championships, they were in the same district as Plano West, and I believe Plano West employed a similar tactic in a district game against them that I want to say went 3 or 4 overtimes, and the final score was
Why wouldn't you?
It was 41 to 38 or something like that.
He sounds like Coach Daryl Kraft. Shout out to Coach Kraft, McKinney North basketball coach. He's been doing it for years. So there's a legendary game that they were definitely outnumbered in height. They had 1 6-footer. The other school had 3. It was a Frisco school, and they held the air out the ball and won 22-18 in the playoff game.
Why wouldn't you?
22-18.
I don't blame the coaches. I will say that because it's the rules as they're written, and if you
22-18.
think that that's the best way for you to match up with a team, that's well within your rights as a coach to play that way. I don't blame them at all, but I think the option should be taken out of their hands.
I get why Allen did it, 2 years ago. I mean, they played Geyer twice in the regular season
work out for
district.
them.
Didn't win either time. Their style just didn't match up well against Geyer. So they said, you know what, screw it. Let's just do something that's completely against what we do and just see how they reacted. I'm not going to lie. It made for some really captivating theater because Geyer was totally flustered by it, and Allen ends up winning the game, part because Geyer just didn't know how to handle that and not being able to get the kind of shots and transition chances they normally get.
That was more of the fact of the underdog story, not that because the style of play was exciting. It was like, oh my gosh, is Allen really going to do this? This is so cool.
And I think, because that's when you do see it, though, it is instances like that, though, when you have a team that is a decided underdog against another team and just trying to level the playing field. So, I get it in the one sense that, you know what, let's just keep things on an even playing field and, okay, may the better team win. But nevertheless, I'm not going to, in the moment, though, maybe just if it comes out in a playoff game, it just resonates that much more. But just, I don't know, seeing the number 1 team in the state on the ropes just because of, because of that tactic was, I don't know, just made for some pretty compelling theater.
So say there was a 35-second shot clock. Does Allen have any chance of winning that game?
No. mean, I watched the game prior when they got run out of the gym by like 25 or whatnot.
And that's fair.
Guyer was
the better team.
Yeah, Guyer was the best transition offense maybe in the state that season. And like Allen was maybe top 5 transition offense, but Guyer was just on another level, and their size was just too much. So yeah, I get why they went against the grain, but yeah, I mean, if you play things,
they had 4 dudes 6'4" taller that could go dunk on you, outrun you, and embarrass you. I saw them play against McKinney.
Yeah, I mean, if you play things straight up and play the exact same kind of game that happened in the regular season, maybe you don't get the exact same score, you don't get the exact same performances, but that type of game was much better suited for Guyer. So I get why Allen had to switch things up.
4 of those dudes went D1 day.
For Guyer, well, one of them's still there. Jacoby Coles is still there. But yeah, I mean, Grayson Carter, Davion Harmon, Jalen Wilson. Oh yeah, I mean, these are that's Oklahoma, and Jalen Wilson's going to Kansas.
We're going to see them go against each other.
So you got to compete with all that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can see why teams might decide you know what, let's just try something completely different.
It's still such a beating to watch, though.
All right, so let's see. Are there any others that I wanted to bring to the table? Oh yeah, this one has no chance of happening, but you know what? Why not? Why not bring it to the table? You know what? I like how baseball and softball implement the run rule. How after 5 innings, if a team is up by 10 runs or more, then you know what? We've seen enough. We're calling it a game. And and what if it's 15 runs if after 3 innings and whatnot? So you know what? Let's take that concept and apply it across football. Let's apply it to basketball. Let's apply it to soccer. And you know what? If you're in football, if you're up, I don't know, 35, 42 points after 3 quarters, whatever margin is deemed the equivalent of crazy comebacks happen plenty of times, but where it's pretty much insurmountable. There's no need to play these next 12 minutes, and we can just kind of go on with our days.
It's an interesting dynamic, especially football, because in theory, you're preserving the health of these kids and cutting down on injuries and making sure kids that don't play a lot or coming out there in garbage time and get a concussion or whatever. Yeah. But in practice, it's never going to happen. Yeah, you're never going to. Yeah. I could see it even with other sports. I could see other sports adopting some sort of mercy rule akin to baseball and softball, but with football, no shot. No. There is no way you're convincing the Texas high school football community to play less than 4 quarters.
Oh yeah, without question.
Ever.
And Kendrick brought up a good point before we came on. People care about the stats in football more so than in baseball and softball and whatever else. So in football, it's like, hey, I'm trying to get my streak of 100 yards receiving or 200 yards throwing.
Or you might be a freshman and you get 300 yards, but when you try to break an all-time record, I saw with Matt Gaddick, you need those 300 yards when you're a senior.
But that game was competitive, though. That's different. That game was awesome.
That game was never in danger of being.
No, I'm not talking about the game. I'm talking about for his career, career stat-wise.
How many times are they ever up by 42 points, though? That'd be the question.
And if you're about,
it's like the Allens and stuff.
Yeah, the only people that would actually affect if we did the 42-point run rule or point rule, whatever you want to call it, would be that kid, that senior that's been on his first year on varsity. He's been on JV as a junior, and he doesn't get to play.
There are ways to guard against that. If you're up by 28 points, midway through the third or early in the third quarter, whatever, you can start funneling in your backups. Then you don't just have to do it in the fourth quarter.
What about just doing a running clock?
Yes, running clock. Yes, that would be perfect.
That's a solution that may actually work. I think that would get so much more traction. It just makes so much more sense than trying to convince people that we should shorten games, because you're shortening games without making it feel like it is.
I can't tell you how much I hate it when it's like a 30-point game in the fourth quarter, and they're not only are they calling a timeout or this and that, or first down, or he goes out of bounds, and they stop the clock. I'm literally like, why?
Third and fourth.
It's such a waste of time right now. My gamer's already pretty much done. I'm like, we could get this show on the road. This game is over.
What if you kept running clocks in an instrument, implement it to basketball or something like that? Or if it's
a rec league basketball game.
If one team's up by 35, 40 points or whatnot, and then the second half, then once it hits the 40-point mark, okay, we're running clock the rest of the way.
What's a better idea, running clock in basketball or a shot clock in basketball?
Shot clock.
Shot clock. Oh yeah, shot clock.
I think the running clock in basketball would be just another Band-Aid, like what Taylor was talking about.
Yeah, no, I think I've seen the running clock implemented maybe once or twice, but just covering Prestonwood in the playoffs. Their first round matchup, often they win that by 6-7 touchdowns, and a couple times, they've gone to the running clock in the second half, and it does make a world of difference. And it would solve the idea of making sure that everybody can still get to play, albeit for not as much time, but still, that's like a nice middle ground.
Trying to get on that field, though.
Those games are long enough as is, so I'm fine with shortening high school football games if we can find a way to. And then let's see. I don't know. Were there any other ideas guess I had one more on my list, but I don't know.
I mean, there kind of the big one that's so obvious I didn't even, feel like I should bring it up. But there has to be a 6A Division 1 or 2 or a 7A or something. I mean, it's coming. I feel like it's coming down the line because they just did it with 5A and especially football, every football classification except 6A has a 1 and 2.
But how they gonna do it? Because they keep talking about. To me, a lot of the schools that are big, like Allen, they got money, but then you got like Glen Park North Shore. My wife went there, but shout out to North Shore, and my father-in-law built that program. But they're in the city, so they don't have the money to be able to travel to the Woodlands, who they would have to travel to, and for a district game, and all that. So that's when you kind of get it mixed up. Like as we know, with that crazy, when my man Devin was here with the McKinney North and the Poteet and them traveling to Texarkana and Tyler and all that stuff. So you're gonna get some of that outside of the Metroplex.
It'd be a question of, I guess, where, like, if anybody's looked through the UIL numbers and where you draw that cutoff and what the theoretical districts would look like as far as...
It's hard, too, because there's so many outliers.
Duncanville, South Lake, and Allen be in the same district every year.
Because the 6A enrollment cutoff, I think, it's essentially like 2,200. It's like 2,190 or something.
I thought 23.
But then it goes all the way up to... Allen's got 6,000 kids. So how do you... I mean,
Exactly.
the cutoff in the midpoint, I mean, a good one would probably be... I mean, at the top end, the majority of schools have about 4,000, really. There's like 15 schools, I think, that have 4,000 or more, and then a bunch, like, between, like, 3,700 and 3,900 or whatever. So you could cut it at, like, 28 or 29 maybe, or at 3 even, but I don't know what the numbers would be. But I think the travel is definitely the biggest obstacle.
Me and Murphy, but to me that highlights like what you have to do to build a program like Prosper and McKinney's. There's no reason they should have to play those at Allen's every year. They've overcame them, but when you look at the numbers, it's like... So, I still
it saves teams at the 5A level like Lake Dallas. We've gone into detail on the podcast a million times about how small Lake Dallas is in comparison. If they couldn't be Division II in football, I'm not saying they wouldn't be, competitive. I think they still would be. But that's just not fair when they're barely a 5A school. Barely. So it's I don't know. It's tough.
It does feel like it's coming, like you said. There's already been some discussion about like the ramifications of a 7A or a 6A Division II, and it does feel like at some point, though, with the UIL recently implementing that for football, that the next domino to fall would theoretically be doing the same thing.
And then it forces, like on the other end, like you said about Lake Dallas, the other end is Highland Park. Matt knows this, and since we've been in high school, Highland Park has always been like not the top one, and they be like 2 people away.
It's always one of the funny realignment subplots. How close is Highland Park going to be to the cutoff this year?
Yeah. And then the one time the numbers changed on them and they got put up to 5A, 6A. It was 5A when we were in school. They didn't make the playoffs for 2 years.
Let's see, one last thing before we get out of here. And this doesn't, there's nothing like that the UIL or anybody could do anything about this. This is just like for just us media folks and whatnot. Uniformity for all district lists.
We're not attacking UIL, but we're attacking district coaches.
We
got a bone.
Politics.
The first column that I wrote when I was at the paper a long time ago was in praise, actually, of the all-district list. I want to say it was the 8-5A baseball or something like that, but it was a list that actually looked like something that you might see as far as like, okay, we had, just 9 people on the first year, like there was like 12 people or so on the first team, 12 on the second team, actually like something that closely approximated like an actual like, okay, here were the 4 best infielders, here were the 3 best outfielders, and so forth. But yeah, just all district list period. And I think you guys we're all in agreement that there's just way too many freaking kids that get a spot on this list. And I think back to 2016. I was compiling the list for District 14 5A. That list had between the superlatives, the first team, and the second team, 110 kids.
So if you played, you got somewhere on the list.
And if you include honorable mentions, that number bumped up to 172. So if you went to the idea, okay, so this was an 8-team district, and this is football, so between offense and defense, there's a total of 22 kids. 22 times 8 is 176. There were 172 kids that were put on the all-district
Imagine
list.
being those 4 kids that didn't.
People, everybody don't get a trophy. If you can ball, you gonna get recognized. If you can't, you won't.
Yes, and that's again, I wanted to. That's what we do with the all area. Like when we started doing all of our all area teams, it's 11 on offense for football, it's 11 on defense. You know what? And if you're one of those districts that has that really implements the fullback or the tight end or just one of those positions that maybe doesn't get enough love in another district, then I'm fine with a flex position or something like that. So,
No, they'll throw in tight end of the year and first team tight end, first team H-back, first team fullback, first team running back. It's okay, there's a running back and that's it.
I can give somebody tight end of the year because it's like you said, depending on what
But the
offense.
H-back, the running back, fullback, that's overkill.
I
to
think the
max.
reason that we get so heated about this topic too is especially now that we've started doing the all area teams. We do it.
Yeah.
We make really
gotta make the calls.
tough decisions on which kid is going to get this spot, whether it be a superlative, first team, second team, flex, whatever. And some really, really good athletes don't make the list.
I think
it's part of it.
When we finish compiling the list and look over some of the kids that we had to leave off, it's I cannot believe
you're not on this
Seriously.
team somewhere.
But guess
you're
what?
not.
There's a lot of really good athletes and a lot of really good teams in the Dallas area.
And being healthy is the key. You could be all world going to Alabama in football, but if you miss 3 games, you can't be a superlative. Sorry.
And it's what you did. I think a lot of the problem with all district lists that
It's also what you
it's
do
what
in the
you
game.
did this year.
Yeah.
Maybe you're going to
exactly.
Oklahoma to play football, but what did you do this year? In high school. I mean, and that doesn't mean that you're not, an elite football player, but were your numbers and your impact really better than X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, it's supposed to be something that outlines, okay, these are the absolute best, most impactful players over the course of a season, and just ultimately it's a case of diminishing returns where how much did it really mean? You may have deserved your spot 100%, but if everybody else with a pulse and a little bit of playing time was already, is on the list with you, then ultimately it kind of waters down what it should truly mean to make one of those teams. It's a big deal to make all district.
And there's some districts, all district lists that have so many different superlatives that I've never heard. There's a new one each year that I haven't heard of, and then they'll be okay, a 2A player of the year, great, but don't have 2 or 3 2A player of the years. Don't have 3. No more 3 newcomers of the year. In 9-6A, the 3 co-MVPs was pushing it, but I get it in a sense because it's 3 All-Americans.
But that kind of goes back to my point. It's
but we have to pick.
Year.
Yeah. But we had to pick
Somebody
an MVP.
did.
We had to pick the person to finish second and third, and
if the coaches vote on a tie, just be adults and figure out a winner. That's it.
we had to do it so they can do it.
Does that mean Naya or Jordan or Jaden, either one of them is more talented than another? But no, I think Jordan Oliver clearly had the best year out of the 3.
And she was more important to her team also.
I don't think it was
I
close.
agree. Jordan Oliver had the better year. Jaden Owen is the better player.
But she missed 4 games.
But she missed 4 games. You can't.
And her team didn't make the playoffs.
We're not even talking about MVP. You shouldn't be able to get a superlative if you miss. For example, I told you how good my man Jack Hagan was. Man, he should have been on the all-district team, but he shouldn't have got a superlative, which he didn't. But he didn't play none. Even though he had the talent, he missed so much time because of his arm. But you gotta be. Availability is part of it.
If I was the all district czar, yes, there's a fixed number of superlatives across all sports, and yes, you cannot have multiple people winning a superlative. It's got to be one person. Got to make sure the best players are accounted for.
And I'll never forget Luke Johnson not being on the all district list. We checked that many times, right? The Luke Johnson with Prosper, Prosper catch.
Your boy, you went article that went viral.
That's right, RJ.
Oh man, I told myself I was going to let that one go. Hey, props to 8-5A. At least they did MVP, Offensive Player of the Year. They didn't go the easy route and give 2. I'll give them that, but I'm done talking about that forever.
You can make the wrong choice, but just make a choice.
Yeah.
I'd respect that more than just handing out a 3-way trophy.
Well,
you get MVP. You get MVP. You get MVP.
And 2 Offensive Player of the Years, 4 newcomers. It's okay.
So yes, kind of constricting just the qualifications for making an all-district list. So I don't know. Do we have any other ideas, or have we pretty much run the well dry on this one?
I think that's enough.
Sounds like that's enough.
Yeah.
And okay, I mean,
We beat
I don't
this
know.
one to death.
The odds
Probably have more, but that's probably enough.
The odds of any of this stuff coming to fruition, it's next to none. But nevertheless, hey, you know what? Nice subject to fill a podcast for. So, that'll wrap it up for this episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. We'll be back on Thursday to continue another installment of our ongoing summer question series. Appreciate you guys for tagging along. In the meantime, folks, you keep enjoying your week, and we will talk to y'all later.